I was sitting on my porch the other day, just watching the world go by. The mailman was making his rounds, a couple of kids were riding their bikes, and the sun was feeling awfully nice on my face. And I found myself thinking about how many mornings I've spent just like that. Thousands of them. It's a comfortable feeling, a peaceful one. But it also got me thinking about all the things I wish I'd understood a little sooner. All the little lies we tell ourselves to make the days easier, and the harsh, beautiful truths that eventually find us, whether we're ready for them or not. At 89, you have a lot of time to think, to look back. And I've come to realize there are some things that every one of us in our later years needs to hear and truly take to heart before too much more time slips away. It's not always easy to talk about, and some of it might sting a little, but I promise you, it comes from a place of genuine care. I'm not here to sell you anything or fill you with fluffy nonsense. I'm here to talk, friend to friend, about 10 harsh truths I've learned on this long road. So, pour yourself a cup of tea, get comfortable, and let's have a chat. Let's start with something that might seem a little counterintuitive, especially when our bodies aren't quite what they used to be. The first truth, and this one took me a long time to truly accept, is that your body is not breaking down. It's communicating with you. For years, I saw every new ache and pain as a betrayal. A stiff knee was a sign I was getting old. A sore back was just part of the deal. I'd get frustrated, even angry, and I'd try to ignore it or just push through it, which usually made things worse. It took a wise physical therapist to finally knock some sense into my stubborn head. She said, "Arthur, your body isn't your enemy. It's your most loyal friend, and it's been trying to send you messages for decades. You just kept stuffing cotton in your ears." Think about that for a moment. That twinge in your hip when you get out of a chair? That's not a random act of cruelty. It's a message. It's saying, hey, we're a little weak here. We could use some gentle movement and strengthening. That shortness of breath when you walk up the stairs? It's not just old age. It's your body pleading, please, let's get the heart pumping a little more often. I've forgotten what that feels like. When we start to listen to these messages, not as sentences to a life of limitation, but as guidance, everything changes. Instead of fighting your body, you start working with it. A walk around the block isn't a chore, it's a conversation. A gentle stretch in the morning isn't a burden, it's you answering back, I hear you, and I'm here to help. This shift, from seeing yourself as a victim of decay to being the steward of a faithful, chatty companion, is absolutely transformative. Now, this leads me directly to the second truth, which is that a comfortable life is often a slow death. Oh, that comfortable recliner. That familiar routine that never changes. The same meals, the same shows, the same path around the neighborhood. There is a deep, seductive allure to comfort, especially after a lifetime of work and worry. We feel we've earned it. And we have. But the problem is, comfort and growth cannot live in the same house. Growth requires a little discomfort. It requires trying something new, something that feels a little awkward or even scary. I'll give you an example from my own life. For 40 years, my wife, Helen, did all the cooking. She loved it, and I loved her for it. When she passed, the silence in the kitchen was deafening. For months, I lived on toast and canned soup because it was comfortable. It was easy. But it was also terribly lonely and, frankly, not very healthy. My daughter finally bought me a beginner's cookbook with big pictures. The first time I tried to make a simple omelet, it was a disaster. I got eggshell in the bowl, I burned the butter, and it ended up looking more like scrambled yellow rubber. It was uncomfortable. I felt clumsy and foolish. But I tried again the next week. And you know what? It was slightly less terrible. And after a few more attempts, I made an omelet I could actually eat. That small, uncomfortable act, that willingness to look foolish in my own kitchen, broke a cycle of sadness. It didn't bring Helen back, but it reminded me that I was still here, capable of learning, capable of nourishing myself. It could be anything for you. Maybe it's finally learning how to use that tablet your grandkids gave you to video call them. It's frustrating at first, I won't lie. But the joy on their faces when they see you? That's worth every moment of frustration. Maybe it's trying a water aerobics class where you feel a bit silly, or joining a book club where you have to talk to new people. Discomfort is the price of admission to a life that still feels alive. And this brings us to a truth that is perhaps the most painful of all to utter, but it's essential. The third harsh truth is that you are probably lonelier than you let on, and it is largely your responsibility to change that. We are masters of the brave face, aren't we? When our children call and ask how we are, we say, "Oh, I'm fine, dear." Keeping busy. But keeping busy can often be a fancy term for filling the empty hours until we can go to sleep again. I know so many people my age who are buried in a deep, quiet loneliness, but they're waiting. They're waiting for the phone to ring. They're waiting for an invitation. They're waiting for someone to rescue them from the silence. I was one of those people. After I retired and then lost Helen, the days could be so long. I'd see families together and feel a sharp ache. I'd think, why don't my kids visit more? Why have my old friends drifted away? And it's easy to build a fortress of resentment around yourself. But one day, I realized a very simple, very harsh thing. I was waiting to be chosen. I was sitting in my house, a silent, stationary target, hoping someone would aim a little companionship my way. The world doesn't work like that. Not for long, anyway. Everyone is busy with their own lives, their own struggles. The difficult, empowering truth is that connection is your job now. You have to be the initiator. You have to pick up the phone and be the one to call, even if you haven't heard from someone in a while. You have to be the one to suggest the coffee date. You have to walk up to that bench in the park where someone else is sitting alone and say, "Beautiful day, isn't it?" It feels vulnerable. There's a risk of rejection. But the alternative, a slow retreat into isolation, is a far greater risk. I forced myself to call an old friend I hadn't spoken to in years. The conversation was a little stiff at first, but by the end, we were laughing. Now we have lunch every Tuesday. I started going to the library at the same time every week, and I've gotten to know the librarian and a few other regulars. They're not deep friendships, not yet, but they are threads of connection, and a fabric is made of many threads. You have to spin them yourself. Now, these first three truths are all deeply connected, you see? Listening to your body often means moving it, which pushes you out of your comfort zone, and that very act of getting out can lead you to new people and new connections. It's a circle. It starts with a decision to stop pretending, to stop waiting, and to start actively engaging with whatever time we have left. And there are more of these truths to explore, about the family we sometimes take for granted and the stories we cling to that no longer serve us. But that feels like a good place to pause for now. Let's pick this up again soon, shall we? It's good to be back with you. I hope you've had a little time to think about what we discussed, about listening to our bodies, stepping out of that comfortable chair, and taking charge of our own social lives. Those were the first steps, the ones that turn our gaze outward again, back towards the world. But there are other truths, harsher in some ways, that we need to turn our gaze inward to see. These are the ones that live in the quiet of our own hearts and in the dynamics of our families. They're about the stories we tell ourselves and the people we assume will always be there. The fourth truth I had to face is that your children do not owe you their lives. Now, I can just feel some of you bristling at that. And believe me, I understand. We raised them. We wiped their tears, we bandaged their knees, we stayed up worrying, we sacrificed. There's a part of us that feels, deep down, that this investment of love and time entitles us to a certain dividend of attention in our later years. We can feel a pang of jealousy when we hear about their vacations, a twinge of resentment when they're too busy to call, a deep hurt when they don't include us in every holiday. I've felt all of that. But here is the harsh, liberating reality: our job as parents was to raise independent adults. If they have their own full, busy lives, with their own children and careers and passions, then we have succeeded. They are not characters in the story of our retirement, they are the authors of their own stories. Expecting them to orbit around our loneliness or our needs is not only unfair, it's a recipe for a relationship filled with guilt and obligation, rather than love and genuine connection. I learned this the hard way with my son, David. I'd call him with a list of little chores, hint about wanting to see him, and then feel wounded when a week would go by. My subtle demands were pushing him away. The change came when I started to truly see him as a man, a father, with his own burdens. I began calling just to chat, to ask about his work, to hear about my granddaughter's soccer game, without any request or complaint of my own. And a funny thing happened. He started calling me more. He started suggesting we get together, just the two of us. When I released him from the debt I thought he owed me, he was free to give his time and love freely. And that is a gift far more precious than any sense of duty. And this leads directly to the fifth truth, which is that holding a grudge is like taking poison and waiting for the other person to get sick. We've all got them, don't we? Those old, festering wounds. The brother who cheated you out of a small inheritance 30 years ago. The friend who said that cruel thing at a party. The child who moved across the country and never calls enough. We carry these stories with us, polishing them like stones in our pockets until they are smooth and familiar. We think we are protecting ourselves by holding on to the rightness of our anger. But we are only poisoning our own well. At my age, you start going to a lot of funerals. And I cannot tell you how many times I've stood in a funeral home and heard one person say to another, "I wish I'd made up with him." It all seems so silly now. They're talking about arguments over land, or political disagreements, or decades-old family slights. The person in the coffin isn't suffering anymore. But the ones left behind, clutching their grudges, are in agony. Forgiveness isn't about saying what they did was okay. It's about declaring your own independence from the pain. It's about setting down a heavy burden you've been carrying for so long you've forgotten what it feels like to walk without it. I had a falling out with my oldest friend, Charlie, over a business deal that went sour back in the 80s. We didn't speak for 20 years. When I heard he was sick, I wrestled with it for a week. Finally, I went to see him. We didn't even talk about the business. We talked about our wives, our grandchildren, and the baseball team we used to follow. He died a month later. Those 20 years of silence seem like such a waste now. A colossal, stupid waste of precious time. Don't let that be you. Make the call. Write the letter. Swallow your pride. It is not a sign of weakness, it is the ultimate act of self-care. Now, the sixth truth is a little different, but it's just as vital. It's that your mind is a garden, and what you stop planting will simply not grow. We worry so much about our bodies failing, but we often just accept our minds shrinking. We stop learning new things because it feels too hard. We stick to the same television channels, the same crossword puzzles, the same conversations. We say, "You can't teach an old dog new tricks." What a terrible, limiting thing to believe. Your brain is plastic. It wants to make new connections, right up until the very end. But it needs you to give it the seeds. Learning to use a computer to see your grandkids on a screen? That's a new neural pathway. Trying a new recipe, even if you burn it? That's a new connection. Listening to a kind of music you've never liked before, just to see if you can hear it differently? That's growth. Picking up a book on a subject you know nothing about? That's planting a seed. I decided, at 82, to try and learn a little about astronomy. I got a book from the library, a simple one with big pictures. I didn't understand half of it, but the half I did understand filled me with awe. Looking up at the night sky is a different experience for me now. It's deeper. It's richer. I didn't become an astronomer, but I stretched a part of my mind that had gone slack. If you don't actively plant curiosity, if you don't water it with effort, your world will inevitably get smaller and quieter. And a shrinking world is a lonely place to live. These truths, about family, forgiveness, and our own minds, are about cleaning house internally. They're about letting go of the weights that hold us down and choosing to engage with life on its own terms. But there are still a few more things we need to talk about, things that get to the very heart of what it means to have lived a good life and how we find the courage to face what's to come. That feels like the right place for us to go next. Well, here we are. We've talked about listening to our bodies and stepping out of our comfort zones. We've talked about our families, our grudges, and tending the gardens of our minds. It's a lot to take in, I know. But these are the conversations that matter, the ones that clear the path for what's truly important. And that's what I'd like to focus on with you now, as we come to the end of our chat. These final truths are about the legacy we leave, not in money or things, but in the echoes we leave behind in the hearts of others, and the peace we make with our own story. The seventh truth is a difficult one to face head-on, but it shadows everything we do at this stage of life. It's this: the world you grew up in is gone, and insisting it should return is a recipe for bitterness. I see it all the time, friends of mine who are in a constant state of outrage. They grumble about the way people dress today, the music, the technology, the politics. They talk about the good old days as if they were a perfect, sun-drenched paradise, forgetting the struggles and hardships that were also part of that time. This clinging to a past that cannot return is like trying to hold onto a handful of smoke. It leaves you with nothing but empty, aching hands. The world has moved on. It's our grandchildren's world now, and it's our job to try and understand it, not to curse it. This doesn't mean you have to agree with everything new. It just means choosing curiosity over criticism. I don't understand all this social media, but I ask my granddaughter to show me the pictures she posts. I may not like the latest popular music, but I can ask my young neighbor what he sees in it. When you approach the present with curiosity instead of condemnation, you stop being a relic and you become a bridge. You connect the past to the present, sharing the wisdom of your experience while remaining open to the energy of the new. Bitterness is a cage. Curiosity is a key. Now, the eighth truth follows from that, and it's one I struggled with for a long time. It's that your possessions are not your legacy. In fact, they are often a heavy burden for those you leave behind. We spend a lifetime accumulating things. A house full of furniture, shelves of knickknacks, drawers of old photographs and letters. We attach our memories to these objects, and we assume our children will want them, that they will understand the weight and the love embedded in every chip and scratch. But the hard truth is, your children have their own houses, their own lives, their own things. They cannot possibly take it all, and deciding what to keep and what to let go of after you're gone is one of the most painful, guilt-ridden tasks you can leave them. I learned this after helping clean out my cousin's home after she passed. It took weeks. We found expired cans of food from 20 years ago, clothes with price tags still on them, boxes of broken appliances she was going to fix one day. It wasn't a treasure trove of memories, it was a mountain of decisions for her grieving children to climb. That experience shook me. I went home and I started looking at my own house with new eyes. That china cabinet full of dishes we never use? That box of old report cards and school projects in the attic? I realized that my legacy isn't in these objects. My legacy is in the stories I've told, the values I've lived, the love I've given. So, I started the work. I've been giving things away to my children now, while I'm still here. I tell them the story that goes with the pocket watch my father gave me as I hand it to my son. I see the appreciation in his eyes, not for the object, but for the story. It's a joyful transfer, not a sad division of assets after the fact. Unburden yourself, and unburden them. Let your legacy be a light heart, not a heavy truckload of furniture. This brings me to the ninth truth, which is perhaps the most important one of all. It's that happiness is not a circumstance, it is a skill you must practice daily. We spend our lives waiting for the conditions to be right for happiness. We think, I'll be happy when I retire. I'll be happy when the mortgage is paid off. I'll be happy when my health improves. But at 89, I can tell you, the conditions are never perfect. There will always be an ache, a worry, a bill to pay, a headline to fret over. If you tie your happiness to external circumstances, you are tying your boat to a sinking dock. Happiness is a muscle you have to flex every single day. It's a conscious choice to find a moment of joy, no matter how small, and to sit with it. It's the warmth of the sun on your face and choosing to truly feel it. It's the taste of a perfectly ripe strawberry. It's putting on a song that makes you tap your foot and just listening to it, without doing anything else. It's writing down one single thing you are grateful for before you go to bed. This isn't Pollyanna-ish nonsense, it's a discipline. It's retraining your brain, which has spent decades looking for problems to solve and dangers to avoid, to also look for beauty, for connection, for tiny specks of light in the darkness. The world will give you plenty of reasons to be sad, angry, or afraid. You have to be the one to give yourself a reason, however small, to be happy. It is your job, and yours alone. And finally, the 10th harsh truth, the one that puts all the others in perspective: you are not going to get out of this life alive, and that is precisely what makes it so precious. We spend so much energy trying to avoid this fact, trying to pretend that maybe, just maybe, we'll be the exception. We chase fountains of youth in bottles and procedures. But embracing your mortality isn't morbid. It is the ultimate liberation. Knowing that your time is finite, that this day, this conversation, this beautiful, ordinary moment will never come again, that is what gives it its breathtaking value. When you truly, deeply accept that you are running out of sand in the hourglass, you stop wasting it on things that don't matter. You stop wasting it on grudges. You stop wasting it on fear of what others think. You stop wasting it on accumulating more stuff. You start spending it on love, on forgiveness, on watching the birds at the feeder, on telling the people you love that you love them out loud and often. Your mortality is not your enemy, it is your wisest teacher, reminding you to live while you are still alive. So, there they are. 10 truths from my 89 years on this earth. They might seem harsh, but I've come to see them as a kind of tough love from life itself. It's never too late to start listening to your body, to step out of your comfort zone, to reach out for connection, to release your children from debt, to forgive an old wound, to learn something new, to let go of a world that's gone, to unburden your loved ones, to practice happiness, and to embrace the beautiful, finite gift of your own life. I'd love to hear what you think. What's one truth that resonated with you today? Share it in the comments below. Let's start a conversation. If this was helpful, if it made you think or feel a little less alone, then please give the video a like and subscribe to the channel for more chats like this. We're all in this together, you know? Navigating these later years with as much grace, courage, and joy as we can muster. Thank you for spending this time with me. Now, go on out there and live. Truly live. Here's to your journey, and to finding beauty in every single day you have left.